squares, you take the square root. Isn't it just going to be x minus 2? If I take the cube root, I get x. If I take the cube root, I get 2. Now I'm going to use this parenthesis to do the rest of this stuff over here. So see how now that I know what a minus b is, now I can do a squared. So what would a squared would be x squared. I'm just following the formula. What does it say to do next? It says put a plus sign. So don't pay attention to if it's positive or negative. Look at the formula. The formula says put a plus sign right there. Then it says multiply a times b, which is 2x. You might think, oh, it's negative 2x. But the formula says put a plus sign there, so you make it 2x. And then the last thing you do is it says take b squared. And if my b value was 2, 2 squared is 4. So this is considered factored form. X minus 2, x squared plus 2x plus 4. You're not going to solve any more than this. Could you tell me one of the x-intercepts just by looking at that, though? One of the x-intercepts is at 2, isn't it? This may or may not be factorable, and I'm not going to have you solve these. It would just be, hey, can you factor this into this? So I took the cube root of each of these terms. So like x times x times x gets me back to x cubed, and 2 times 2 times 2 gets me back to 8. So let's see if we can get the next one. What if I take the cube root in part B? What would I get for my two terms? Yeah, just 10x plus 1. See how it's a plus sign now? So I put a plus sign in the binomial. And now I'm going to write out my trinomial that comes next. So I square, see how it says a squared? I square the first term. What's 10 times 10? So this would be 100x squared. You've got to look at that other formula. See how they alternate signs. So this is like minus, plus, plus. This one's going to be plus, minus 10x, because I multiply 1 times 10x. And then the last term is always a plus, so plus 1. So using the formula, just take a shot. Can you try C? See if you could get it or not. Just try it for a minute on your own. So you need a binomial and a trinomial for part C. Maybe that list of cubes will help you. There's a couple today on the practice that would be really good to try for this. I'll give you like one more. And then you just multiply these two terms together. So that would be 20x's. So plus 20x, and then it's plus 25. I kind of ran out of room. So there's always a plus sign at the end. And it's just plus 25 because the 5 is what's being squared. So you don't even use the initial problem anymore. I just work from this binomial. I square the first and the last term, and then the middle term is just the two terms multiplied together. The 4 times the 5 is the 20x. So take a stab at it on the practice. So before you go to lunch, this would be a good page to try. And then when we come back from lunch, there's some graphing practice. This is 113. The back side is rate of change. I'm going to write a note. I wrote it on the board. Let's leave the rate of change as a warm-up for Monday. There's no rate of change on your quiz on tomorrow because it's going to not use a calculator. All the numbers that you factor will be small enough, but you're graphing. So I'm not putting rate of change on your quiz. So try this front page kind of before lunch here. You got like 10 minutes. Is that how long? What time do we leave? Yeah, 11:45. I don't know if it's going to ring at 11:40. Maybe you have 5 minutes. Maybe you have 10. So try these. These are grouping. If you want to skip the sum and difference of cubes because they annoy you, you could skip them. And then at the bottom, there's a couple quadratic forms. So I think if you could try the front page of 113 before lunch, maybe after lunch I could do a little graphing review and then you try some of the graphing on your own. This video here. So this is page 113A. We just did example 4, so a standard form example. So the other one I wanted you to look at, if you just turn the page, I'm actually going to borrow the grid for number 6. So if you could just cross out, that's just another standard form example. So on number 6, if you could just rewrite it as factored form x plus 4x plus 2, we learned how to graph intercept form when there's 2 parentheses. Remember, vertex form looks like number 8. There's 1 parentheses with a squared for left or right, up or down. So this looks different because there are 2 parentheses. So that's how you know it's an intercept form. So what do I do when it's an intercept form? I plot my intercepts. So whatever makes it 0, right? Just like we've been doing with factors. So -4 and -2 are going to be my 2x intercepts. So I plot -4 and I plot -2. And then I find where the halfway mark is. So -3 is halfway between. So -3 is the x value of my vertex. Plug that back in up top and see if you can figure out the y value of your vertex. So if I plug in -3 here, I would get +1. And if I plug in -3 here, I would get -1. So +1 times -1 would be -1. So my vertex must be at -3, -1. So you plot your intercepts, find your vertex. Then this graph is just the parent function. If I wanted to, I could put a 1 in front, and that's just the parent, no stretch, no flip. So over 1, up 1, over 2, up 1, 2, 3, 4. So I might not give you 3 graphs, but I'll probably give you at least 2. So either standard form, vertex form, intercept form, 2 out of those 3 that you need to graph the quadratic, and then a couple problems where you need to factor. So if you there's plenty of practice. I would at least try to do like another standard form before you leave. Make sure you understand standard form. On the next page, 113B, there's way too many examples on here. You don't have to do all of them. But do you know how to solve the equation when it's already in factored form? Right? All you're doing is saying what makes this 0 and what makes this 0. Don't overthink it. You shouldn't be multiplying that out or graphing it, right? K is either -1 or 5. So I might give you a problem like that just to make sure when it's in factored form, you know what to do with it. So there's a few practice, like if you look at number 3, there's like a coefficient of K. So you might want to try like example 3. If you go down on that page, do you see a problem on like 5 and 6 and 7? See how there's not a 0 on the right-hand side? On all of these problems, you need to start by getting a 0 before you factor. So like, let's just put number 5 in the right format here. It should be x squared minus 11x. Then that would be plus 24 equals 0, right? So you might want to just go through and like, circle on, 6, 7, 8. Before you practice factoring, you need to get it equal to 0 so that you can factor and find the x-intercepts. I took 19 and added 5. And you could use a calculator for that part. But so then, then this is a diamond problem, right, where you're figuring out your factors. I think you could do that from there. All right, so be on the lookout for those. And there's a few on the back. So if I start a couple more for you to do, if you look at number 19, 19 is a different method. That's the greatest common factor method. So you might want to look at that one. I'm trying to see if there's any difference of squares off the top of my head. What other one should I have you focus on? Like an example like number 15, that's going to be a box method problem. So you probably want to do it because it's a box method. I don't necessarily see difference of squares on this sheet. So you might see a difference of squares on your quiz. But all right, so if you haven't finished first, don't do this rate of change problem. We'll do that on Monday. I would go back and work on, do you know how to do a grouping example? Difference of cubes, this is going to be bonus, but I might throw a, quadratic form on the quiz. So the quiz will be like 4 questions. It'll be pretty short, like graph this, and then factor this and factor this. So there's like, what, 6 factoring methods, right? Greatest common factor, difference of squares, a trinomial diamond, a trinomial when you need the box, and then we did grouping with cubes, and the quadratic form with like cubes. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'll probably put kind of like 1 of each or 5 out of those 6. So be on the lookout for all the different strategies. You probably will see one of these. I might throw one on there that the answer is just prime to check if you know x squared plus 25 is not factorable. It's just prime. So you need to have mastered kind of factoring this week. So you've got like another 15 minutes now to work through some practice. Work either on graphing or on